because this project is taking place, this conference and also the exhibitions. So it's also taking in a larger framework of European network project called Green Revisited. And this is the project which considers which is asking to reconsider use notion green, because which is symbolically associated with nature, and at the same time we also would like to foster new discourses on nature cultures in order to overcome the dualism between the human and nature, and how a green notion of green is often used probably symbolically to mask the increasing technical manipulations of nature's environment, has been very on a focus of this project, which conceptually has been developed by Jen and proposed and together with Rixi, but developed and proposed by Jens HAUSER, our next speaker, who also co-curated with us on green exhibition last year here in Riga and curated overt exhibition in Bourges, France, recently. Okay, Jens?
Yeah, hello. Hi, Rasa. Can you hear me?
Yes, very good.
Okay, can you see me?
Yes.
Can I share my screen with you?
Yes.
Okay.
Perfect.
Okay, can you see that?
Yes.
Okay, so in my short intervention today, I will focus on strategic aspects in curatorial work, as you mentioned, related to this interdisciplinary field of research that I have coined green studies over the last years. And I have you...
Okay, voila.
Is it fine?
To all the other speakers.
Okay. So I will focus on strategic aspects in curatorial work related to this interdisciplinary field called green studies, and that have preceded the conception of our current and ongoing European research and exhibition platform, Green Visited, that Rasa just mentioned. So after recalling some reasons and ways of why and how to deconstruct the pervasive greenest trope in our contemporary culture, I will pick some examples of how green has been conceptually inverted and opened up in two exhibitions created in 2019, Ungreen at the Latvian Nature Museum of Art in Riga, and Ouvert, Phytophilia, Chlorophobia, and Situated Knowledges at the Imetrop Transpalette Art Center in Bourges, France. So these strategies not only encompass new ways of dealing with audiences' perception, but also include material and performative practices such as gardening, live pigment production, the staging of multisensory alternatives to vision, transspecies encounters, but also going beyond the grain, against the grain of dominant color symbolism. So both exhibitions put anthropocentric assertions to the test in the age of ubiquitous and symbolic greenwashing, and critiques the tendency to green everything as a kind of hypercompensation. I will share examples of how inverting green as a concept can unfold in staging concepts, from white cubes and black boxes to greenhouses and beyond. Sorry. I want to start with an image we used for the poster of our 2018 conference of the Society of Literature, Science and the Arts on green in Copenhagen, the city that advertised itself so persistently as green as hardly any other. And the image shows a very material artwork by Hehe in collaboration with physicist Jean-Marc Chomaz, Fleur de Lis, a miniature son et lumière show that simulates a nuclear meltdown via a green glowing and growing atomic mushroom cloud escaping the cooling tower of a scale model of a nuclear power plant underwater. So dissipating like vegetation in the form of slowly unfolding lily blossom, in French fleur de lys, a symbol both for purity and for the French monarchy since the 12th century, this seductive spectacle makes reference to the Grande Nation's policy to draw 80% of its energy from nuclear reactors, advertised as clean and green. And we obviously need to be careful with these dematerialized green metaphors. So our Europe Creative Project Green's main objective is to develop this platform to shape emerging nature cultures, paradigms via the arts, and to strengthen this international network committed to enhancing criticality by investigating the pervasive greenest trope as we encounter it today. Because we often uncritically use green's symbolism while neglecting its material and epistemological aspects, delegating it to any kind of hermeneutic interpretation out of the blue, where it can mean all and its opposite. So unlike other colors, green seems to have a unique quality of ambiguity. So first, there is the continued usage to stand in for nature, the ecologically benign, that what grows without us. But in parallel, the same color spectrum marks pathology, toxicity. Green acts a kind of ouvert chameleon color, a medium per se, and a central cue in the evolution of humans' cultural representations. So green is paradoxically the most anthropocentric of all colors. It plays a central role in human evolution and self-understanding as color, percept, medium, material biological agency, semantic construct, and ideology. In its inherent ambiguity between alleged naturalness and artificiality, it is being employed to reconcile humans with otherness as such and to hypercompensate for what we have lost. So for me, this started already in 1990, when I was literally young and green, with this article I wrote for a local German newspaper on an eco-art intervention with fake trees painted in all colors but green, and ironically concluded that naturally a green tree wouldn't be art. But why shouldn't it? Once printed to prove this sentence false, became a vital obsession. Not only did I begin to collect everything I found on greenness and art, but also engaged with literally a live art appropriating biotechnologies for many years. So art at the threshold of the technoscience appears to be well situated to reveal contradictions and paradoxes when disentangling allegedly linked notions such as aliveness, naturalness, and greenness. So first, some basics. Let's remember that to humans, a plant only appears green because its chlorophyll absorbs the high energy red and blue light photons for photosynthesis, but reflects the middle spectrum as it wastes, so to say. So this spectrum with a wavelength between roughly 490 and 565 nanometers is useless for plants' photosynthesis, but it corresponds precisely to the larger spectrum visible to humankind as a result of biological evolution. It's our middle spectrum. Green literally is our medium. So humans are therefore tempted to mistake vegetal chaff for the vegetal green itself. A disastrous ontological misunderstanding, since color perception and color language give us anthropocentrically defined colors, but not colors themselves. However, our co-evolving dog friends cannot see green, and many artists and philosophers have engaged in post-anthropocentric approaches, indicating epistemological shifts in subversive ways, leading us to ask less what is green, but rather where, why, and for whom is green. Findings in paleogenomics indicate that humans and primates in general may have paid an eye for a nose. Trichromatic vision that permits to distinguish red fruit from green foliage led to defunct olfactory receptor genes. So better color vision apparently means a less sensitive nose. This also poses the question of multimodality of greenness. If it relates to more than just a visible wavelength, what information do we miss from the smell or the sound of greenness? The question therefore becomes through which media, materials, language, and etc. is green is made, mediated, measured, and perceived. One aspect is that also how languages play a role in color categorization. In the Western context, the word green is rooted in Middle English and Latin to signify sprout, growth. It's associated with nature, vegetation, fertility, spring, youth, hope, and aliveness. But existing studies also show how these universal tendencies in color naming across languages indeed differ in the way boundaries between color terms are being placed. So between English and autochthonous languages, the latter, for example, tend to bundle green and blue into GRU categories. And these language differences, in turn, also cause differences in color cognition. So there's also been very little reflection about the effects when greenness as a trope migrates across different knowledge cultures, even across academic disciplines. On the one hand, engineers uncritically brand green chemistry or green biotechnology as ecologically benign. On the other, climate researchers point to the greening of the Earth and reverse its meaning. They talk about greening itself as the alarming effect of anthropogenic CO2 emissions. Here, greening literally denotes global greenest trends, the widespread increase of unforeseen vegetation over 25 to 50% of the global vegetated area due to CO2 concentration, climate change, and nitrogen deposition. Yet disciplines such as the economic and political science continue to use the greenest trope in a naively literal way. Green growth wants to reconcile ecologically sustainable economic development with business models and voluntarily alludes to natural vegetation growth. Economic theory also analyzes a green paradox, arguing that well-intended climate policies may even counterproductively accelerate global warming. And now media studies critique the speech of greening of the media as a strategy by which information and communication technologies dress up as ecologically gentle in order to downplay their toxic ingredients sourced in poisonous working conditions, hazardous waste, or the greenhouse gases produced by large cloud computing centers. In art history, despite the availability of plant-based materials, pigments and dyes stable enough to technically fix green color were long not only difficult to obtain, but also the most toxic in art history. For the first time, Impressionist painters could go out into the green with handy metal tubes produced by the chemical industry. Ironically, these came to represent nature and vegetation. Indeed, it is hard to estimate how many painters and art lovers actually died because of the representation of nature during what James Walton has coined the arsenic century. This bright, alluring substance known as copper acetoarsenide is highly toxic, known as Scheele's green, Schweinfurt green, but also Paris green, since it was used to exterminate rats in Parisian sewers, an animal poison popular not only in paintings, but also in wallpapers that killed many. So despite their different media, art in both the Ungreen and the Ouvert exhibitions employs greenness with technoscientific awareness, criticality, and a deep media analytical approach to bridge this knowledge gap, increasingly obstructing an interdisciplinary dialogue between the arts, the humanities, and the natural science, claiming that real engagement with plants also need to be situated beyond symbolism. As much as the concept of green is thus inverted, I now want to suggest that such inversion has in both cases also been used in connecting and staging the various art projects. So in literary style, inversion is also called anastrophe, from the Greek to turn back, meaning the syntactic reversal of the normal order of words in a sentence, used in poetry to produce emphasis, or in rhetoric, the turning of an argument against the person who put it forward. It also can be considered as alienation, defamiliarization, or distancing effect in the tradition of Shklovsky and Brecht, creating unusual states effects that were as a reminder to an audience of the artificiality of the performance on stage or at stake, intended to assign the audience an active role so it can more clearly perceive the real world. Also in chemistry, inversion means causing a change from one active configuration to an opposite one. So let's have a look at how such inversions inspire and transpire in the staging strategies we put forward in Ungreen and Ouvert in both exhibitions. So entering the exhibition space, audiences encountered the purest green light possible in Jan-Peter Sonntag's installation X from the gamma-Ver cycle, generated by a monochrome and monofrequency plasma light in which gases need to be heated up during 10 minutes. It's inspired by Jules Verne's The Green Ray, describing a strange color phenomenon at sunset over the sea, before it disappears. Likewise, when looking into this light spectrum, the human eye adapts and starts to perceive it as white. Perception, Sontag says, becomes a sculpture. The exit of the show was a totally dark space in which green sound, if you want, is presented without any visual disturbance. Testimonies from rich and exuberant Amazonian biodiversity in Francisco Lopez' hyper rainforest. An immersive sound installation created from original environmental records carrying out during 20 years in rainforests all over the world. Behind the visual impression of sublime greenery, rainforests are natural acousmatic environments. The sources of all the sounds remain overwhelmingly invisible. So how green are forests actually once you start measuring them? Asked artist Agnes Meyer-Brandis in her work Forest Green, showing the average monochrome color value of a landscape over a whole year. But even in the staging of this automated installation, Kentucky Perfect by Robert Hengeveld, a life-grown ideal green lawn, as anthropocentric and anthropogenic vegetation cover, a symbolic surface which does not accept any failure and requires continuous effort to be maintained, defamiliarization, color inversion effects are crucial. The grass is continuously lit, watered, and mowed. Interestingly, the reddish-white gross lights make the actual turf appear as rather gray. But after a few minutes of observation, our eyes perceive it as green. And then, when turning around, what seemed to be a white cube gallery before is shimmering greenish everywhere. His public intervention, called toy emissions, also function through the contradiction between the materiality of pollution and the symbolic color codes at stake as well. Here, a miniature Porsche driving through the streets of Manhattan releases smoke in yellow, pink, green, blue, or purple. The toy Porsche has everything the bigger one has, as well as more beautiful clouds of colored emissions. Another kind of inversion takes place in Eva Maria Lopez's garden and photography projects. I Never Promised You a Green Garden includes ornaments with decorative motifs similar to those folk art and mandalas have, but consisting of logos from companies that produce glyphosate or GMO plants. In first step, Lopez burns the ornamental patterns in the very literal sense of a brand that appears as negative into the lawn. In the follow-up project, We Resist, that we developed in Bourges, she inversed that while seeding an ornamental garden in the courtyard of the art center using 16 plant species that have developed resistance to herbicides that are sold by multinational chemical companies. So the design of the ornaments now represents selected features of these companies' logos and is reminiscent of the most typical jardin à la française. But We Resist also refers back to Baroque gardens once designed by French landscape architect André Lenôtre, dominated by optical symmetry of the woody masses and enormous walls of greenery highlighting the perspectives, but less guided at all by aspects of biodiversity. Spela Petrit's 20-hour-long performance Scotopoesis can also be conceived of as a biophotographic inversion, in which the artist and germinating cress stand vis-à-vis each other, illuminated by a strong artificial light. The title means shaped by darkness and refers to the continuous shadow of the artist's body that signals the plants to respond by changing their shape and color, so that their bodies in turn produce a living imprint of her silhouette. By obstructing light, the artist's shadow causes a phenomenon called etiolation, resulting both in the paling and lengthening of the crest stems, which is contrasted by the artist's own shrinking height due to the persistent stillness over 20 hours. Different levels of inversion are guiding Adam Brown's perspective installation, performative installation Shadows from the Walls of Death, where he recreates live this highly toxic pigment, Paris green, often used in deadly wallpapers to re-establish at home, ironically, humans' material connection to the color green during the Industrial Revolution that was eroding it. But besides reproducing the toxic wallpaper, also a Van Gogh referenced image the famous green window in his bedroom that is so stable that it has been overcoming time, while all the other pigments, the red and the blues in this image has faded over time. This is painted in Paris green, only then to be further bioremediated and detoxified by bacteria-based microecologies of extremophile bacteria in the petri dish. Placed next to each other in the Bourges Gallery, Karen Bonneval shot terrariums from the Victorian period of what is called faun fever, where every bourgeois interior had to have a kind of furniture to bring greenness, preferably exotic, back into the living room. The terrarium, also called the Wardian case, was invented to protect plants imported from overseas to Europe from air pollution in the 19th century. But here, these plants in Bonneval's work are made out of palm oil wax. In parallel with the controversy surrounding palm oil, held responsible for ecological issues linked to monocultures and deforestation, the artist refers back to the history of the botanical science as colonialist. The Wardian case is also invoked in Tavi Suisalo's installation Waiting for the Light in the Ungreen exhibition in Riga. Here, the Wardian cases function as miniature closed ecosystems in which plants are grown under the artificial light provided by fiber optic cables used in intercontinental communication and carried by threads of light as thin as a tenth of a human hair, while being as essential to technological societies as the sun is for the plants. And finally, Daniela Mitterberger and Tiziana Derme put the viewer into a situation of interspecies communication with bats, another kind of inversion. The eye of the other explores the bat's sensorial systems. While humans distinguish fruit from foliage visually, via their ability to discriminate red and green, acquired throughout biological evolution, bats do not rely on the primary of the visual sense. They rather find flowers by recognizing the geometry of a flower by generating so-called echo-fingerprints. The eye of the others translates these fingerprints into audible frequencies and visual sensual patterns comprehensible to human senses, while acknowledging that bats are crucial indicators of biodiversity and pollinators as well, on which several plants partially or even wholly depend. So the technoscience of today have themselves become powerful producers of aestheticized images. But what we need are material media-specific analysis of how green mediation conceals its technological character and appears transparent, while in fact camouflaging precisely those layers that produce what they pretend to only mediate. Therefore, the entanglement between symbolic green, ontological greenness, and performative greening poses challenges across disciplines that provide an epistemological panorama for playful debunking. And this is precisely what the Green Visited Encountering Emerging Nature Cultures aims to achieve and will still do over the next 2 years. Thank you.
Thank you, Jens. Is there some... thank you, Jens. Do you hear me? Yeah? Okay. Okay. Thank you for your interesting journey through all these green ideas. I think they're now becoming already, you can so shortly and very, very condensed way describe them. I really think that, I hope that also artists of all these exhibitions have helped you to shape this concept so powerful, I would say, really like much more confident. So I'm really happy about this. So my question would be how you, because we have been recently discussing so many discourses about green and ecology, and this time eco-data, where specifically we were focusing on the relations of technologies, especially technoscientific methods, also are used in arts, maybe more specifically. And how do you think these approaches, which may go even different perspectives, what is common? What could be the most important to continue this discussion so we don't go each in parallels or each in different directions?
Yeah, that's a very good question, Ratha. And I think that the dialogue that we have on the kind of interdisciplinary level is the most precious, because very often when you have funding applications, everybody talks about interdisciplinarity and how important it is, and then everybody gets back to work and does his own specialized stuff. What I found throughout the years with the greenest trope is that everybody feels concerned, and that this way of being concerned and having something to say about the topic is that what makes this interdisciplinary possible. And I strongly believe that the different angles that we have put together reveal that we need to actually go beyond words, go beyond discourses and the symbols to actually reveal the contradictions inherent in something which seems to be self-evident. And so I think the force of the strengths of this project as we conduct it right now is that anybody can buy in, anybody can hook up with that, because obviously everybody on the planet has a kind of relationship to green, whatever the discipline is. And I think this is the strongest aspect that I think we are currently taking advantage of.
Okay, thank you so much. And now I would like to give a floor, next speaker, Kristin BERGAUST. She is also one of the cases how green project else could be interpreted. Kristin also is is participating in the Green Revisited project as our partner from Oslo, who will be organizing also a large conference, Renewable Futures 4 edition next year in Oslo or online or both. Okay, Kristin. Kristin is and just to mention, she's an artist and a researcher and educator, and she's a professor in Oslo Met University.
Thank you, Rasa. Thank you for inviting me for this fantastic event. It's been very intense days, I would say. I'm happy to get the slot to present this beautiful book published by Acoustic Space in Riga. So that's what I will talk about. I will not go into all of the other discussions that we had. I'm also grateful to be part of the Green Project, of course, and the Renewable Network, Renewable Futures Network. On behalf of those projects, we will arrange the conference next year, probably in the beginning of November. And it will be online, but we are also trying to make something physical, maybe taking inspiration from Open Fields Ecodata Conference to combine an exhibition and something physical as much as possible with this online talks that have been also very, very nice, I think. I am now in a kind of project space, and with me are other people. Whoops, I don't find her. Come here. Yeah. This is Elin T. Sørensen, also an important contributor to the project Oslofjord Ecologies. Technical stuff, can you maybe run my video and then I will share, it's a short video, 4 minutes, and after that I will share the screen with you and tell you more about the book. Okay, it was some glitches there in the playback of the film, but that's okay. It's a small excerpt of a longer expedition into the Oslofjord. I just wanted to show you a little bit how it looks and what it is like to be on the fjord in these melancholy times of almost no traffic. So this was done in June, these recordings from the fjord. Going over to the book, it started as a project, part of Renewable Futures, Creative Europe project. We had a workshop for about 10 days with about 50 different participants in and out. A quite loose program of discussions and presentations. And that was really what we planned to set out to do, just to make this workshop named Oslofjord Ecologies. But then the question, what can art do, became a kind of provocative motor to move us on. So we did different things and ended up with this book. This is not a sales pitch, if you think so, because this book is actually downloadable for free on the link you see here. So it is you can access it without paying anything. So this is an academic publication in the sense that it has been peer-reviewed by Acoustic Space Scientific Committee, and it has been in a way framed to be part of the university system that some of us are dependent on. The contributors are not only academics and scholars, many of them are artists. They have presented ideas, developed works, and some of them have also written about it. I want to present just shortly what kind of content we have in the book. Some of the work is done by colleagues in OsloMet, for instance, Paul Christensen Scheel, who has written about sustainability through art and in a way discussed different perspectives on ecology and art and different theoretical groundings for that. And that also follows the discussions in the project, where we didn't start with a kind of set view on what ecology and should entail, and still it is not it's not a common denominator or a common definition on ecology in the project. We also have a couple of articles that are quite extensively based on PhD research. One of them is Elin T. Sørensen's article, The Blue Mussel's Voice. It's part of her PhD work. She is an artist and landscape architect and has looked at what she calls the tidalscape, the sphere where the city meets the sea. And this is quite groundbreaking research and following the needs of the blue mussel. It has quite a big consequence for how we do planning in our cities. This is very, this is what's happening in Oslo now, really. The whole seafront is developed and changed, and the mussels are kind of expelled from their earlier places. Sabine Popp, another PhD fellow in artistic research, investigated kelp and seagrass as a life form, a material and a phenomena, but also as a subject of social and historical discourse, uses as medicine and food and material. Other artistic reflections was done with Gunhild Vatn, who wrote about the ambivalence of oil aesthetics. She also did quite an extensive project investigating the oil aesthetics from the 70s and onwards. This is kind of under-researched area in Norwegian art. Very few people have actually worked with oil. Tona Gulpinar and Anneke van der Veer did this sculptural project, which was relational and social, creating meeting spaces for young people and audiences in the exhibitions. Nina Westby, Utopia, where the heart matters, she contributed with the project of young people in areas that are quite problematic in the center of Oslo, not the least as a consequence of this city development. Merete Røstad also did a PhD on her embodied sound archive and contributed an article about that. Finally, the most more theoretical insights come from Professor Wenche Aure, who combined eco-art and positions in qualitative research. Helene Illeris, professor at the University of Agder, wrote about on the potential of ecological thinking and art in education. I tried to write an essay myself at the end of the book, and there I went on investigating the question, what can art do? And ended up thinking that we can reformulate that question a bit. We could maybe look at how artistic methods and sensibilities can reformulate what we are doing to show something about how does art do things. Maybe that is where we can create links to other fields of knowledge and research. And I think Jens's presentation also shows that very, very well. That artists do find ways of looking at these problems that are quite inviting and open for other people who work in other professional fields. So now I will just show you some pages from the book. As you see here, there were many activities. This black and white photo on the left side is actually RASA SMITE lecturing or talking, presenting. We had different activities, walking around the city, visiting different spaces and places, learning more about kelp as food from the company in Northern, Moving around was very important, and the most important trip was maybe the one we made to the fjord, where we listened to the fjord for some hours. We rented a boat. It was late in November, but still a very nice day, as you can see. We had the woman in the yellow overall is a biologist, and she helped us understand what we were listening to. I was quite sure it would be more like a poetic thing or a conceptual thing to listen to the fjord, but it turned out to be very concrete, that we could actually hear, oh, this is a mackerel. This is very strange for this season. But actually the biologist could tell us what we heard to a large extent. This trip was quite productive. Many of us did works based on that. As you saw, the animation that was playing in the video at the beginning was a result of the trip. This one, where there are stills from the animation you already saw. And I was able to go to some of these exploded places and listening to them where there was actually nothing to hear. Here you can see some of Elin T. Sørensen's work. Here you see the more concrete outcomes of how to create architecture for blue mussels, and also some images from an exhibition she made as part of her PhD project. Here is Sabine Popp's work. This is the work about kelp, where she has collected images from different sources, from books, from the internet, from scientific sources, and given them to the audience to play with. Here is RASA and Smith's work, some I'm sure many of you know. And you can also see a glimpse of RASA by the Oslofjord collecting mud for bacteria batteries. And this is also something that we have talked a lot about these days, about the eco-aesthetics of letting the natural processes show themselves. This is also happening in this work in a quite different way, quite simple. It is Alexis Parra's energy catcher, where he's just catching the sun on plants and creating a kind of photographs or light-sensitive surface is catching the plants as they are. It reminds me also a little bit of Spela Petrik's work that you showed earlier, Jens. Here is a kind of different take on the Oslofjord. As you see from the title, it is also social sustainability as an interest in this project. And here you see Katrine Constance Gjelsnes in a kind of free camping island that has been like a free space for many years, which is now this year closed for renovation. And Constance just documents what happens in this kind of environment. It's something in between paradise and the nightmare, where people don't manage to share resources, really, or not always. Here is a glimpse of the Ocean Viking, the oil project, about oil aesthetics.
Kristin, you have 1 minute left.
And this is the social sculpture that has gone through many different phases, from being textile to now to the left. You see it is lying right by the Oslofjord, close to the town hall in Oslo. And now it has become another material. It is, I think, some kind of polished concrete, but kids still play on it.
Kristin, you have 1 minute left.
Just a few glimpses from performances. And I think I probably have used my time.
Kristin, you have 1 minute left.
Okay, that's nice. I will finish my sharing if I can find I don't find the button. Stop share. Oh, yeah.
Somewhere down.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, no, this was more or less what I just wanted to go through the book with you, and I hope it can be something that other people can use. It is about the Oslofjord, but the Oslofjord also resembles many other places, nature cultures, mixed environments. And we all have to be more at home now. So that's also something that I think this project has helped me to understand how it is to work more locally and be more satisfied with that.
Right.
So,
thank you so much. And I think, Kristin, it would be great if you could share this link in a chat here for everyone. So to download the book. Yeah, that would be really nice. Okay, and also everybody please follow the information also through RIXI and through Green Project, and we will be probably shortly announcing call already for the next event in November, next year in November, because it was postponed due to COVID and the conference, and but we will be trying to organize it again online and combine maybe even more events, because if we are in online situation, we can also contribute from the other places as well. Okay.